My friends advised me to open my marriage to try out new Johnsons. I told my husband and did it anyway. Hey Reddit, using a throwaway account because I don't want this associated with my main. I've done something very horrible and now I feel incredibly guilty about it. It's like the scales have fallen from my eyes and I realize how wrong I was. I cheated on my husband and as a consequence, he kicked me out. I don't know if there's any way to rectify this. I'm currently staying at a hotel until the little fund I have dries up as no one will take me in. My husband and I have been married for about 5 years. I'm 36, he's 35. We met in college and quickly became attached to each other. We started as friends and within a few months our feelings grew, leading us to start dating. Our marriage has always been amazing. My husband is what you'd call a picture-perfect partner. He takes care of everything, he's attentive, and he's simply amazing. Our intimacy was great, and our communication was top-notch. However, recently I made a terrible mistake. I suggested we open our marriage to try new experiences, and now I'm facing the consequences of that decision. My husband's trust in me has been shattered, and I'm just wondering if there's any way to regain what we've lost. The thing is, despite how awesome our marriage was, things started feeling a bit dull over time. It wasn't a sudden change, but more like a slow fade of excitement. In the beginning, everything was perfect. We were head over heels in love, discovering each other's quirks and just enjoying being together. Our time together was passionate, and every moment felt like a celebration of our love. But as time went by and years rolled by, a routine crept in. What used to be thrilling became routine. Our conversations, while still meaningful, shifted to daily tasks, work updates, and future plans. The spontaneous and adventurous moments became rarer and rarer as responsibilities piled up. I began craving something new, something to bring back that initial thrill. Our usual routine, while comfy, started feeling boring. It wasn't that I loved my husband any less. It was just a desire for change, a break from the same old routine. This desire for excitement led me to suggest opening up our marriage, thinking it could add some spice back into our lives. I thought it would be a way to explore new things while still cherishing our relationship. Little did I know the mess it would create and the hurt it would cause us both. Our bedroom activities were getting pretty dull too. It wasn't the exciting, passionate experience it used to be. Instead, it felt routine and lacking in excitement. I missed those moments when just a touch could send tingles down my spine and every kiss felt like fireworks. Now, it was like we were just going through the motions without that spark. I wanted back that deep connection we once had, where our bodies spoke volumes without words. But it seemed to have faded, and now everything was just predictable. But I held back from talking to my husband about how bored and stuck I felt. I felt kind of bad since he was handling all the bills and payment, and I never really thought about bringing up anything that might shake up our marriage. I, however, did try to shake things up by suggesting new things and trying to surprise him, but it felt like we were stuck. Our physical closeness had become more of a habit and was no longer as passionate as before. I never thought I would be the kind of person to consider opening up my marriage. It was never something I imagined doing. It wasn't part of my upbringing or something my husband and I had discussed seriously. At first, when I felt the need for excitement, my thoughts didn't turn to an open marriage. It was my friends who planted the idea in my mind. Our friend group was small but close. We had been together since high school. There were about 5 of us and we shared everything, including our relationship struggles. So when I mentioned how mundane and dull things had become in my marriage, I was hoping they might have suggestions to add some spice back into our lives. We would often have these discussions about our relationships and my friends were always full of ideas and advice. Hence why I decided to talk to them about how I was feeling. That was when they suggested that I try other men and that I could do that by opening up my marriage. That's when my friends pitched the idea of opening up my marriage. They were diving deep into open relationships, and they started sharing stories with me of how it had breathed new life into their marriages. They talked about how it had spiced things up and added excitement to their lives and marriage. Some even admitted that their marriages were on the brink of ending until they tried this unconventional approach. Initially, I brushed it off, thinking it wasn't for me and that my husband would never go for it. But over time, their stories got more intriguing. I started to see the appeal and wondered if it could inject some passion back into our relationship. The idea of exploring new connections and feeling desired again was tempting. These thoughts kept nagging at me and it started gaining traction as days went by. My friends were dead set that an open relationship would be the magic fix for my marriage. I had my doubts, especially knowing my husband's stance on loyalty and commitment. Still, their persistence got me thinking, and I was also very curious about what it would be like to try something new. After a tipsy conversation with my friends one night, I decided to bring up the idea with my husband. I waited for the right moment, catching him in a good mood after work, but his response was immediate and clear-cut. He was not in the least bit interested. He stuck to his guns, believing in the strength of our bond and the promises we made to each other. To him, bringing others into our relationship just didn't make sense. In his words, he believed in the sanctity of our marriage and the promises we had made to each other, and he saw no need to invite others into our relationship. I respected my husband's boundaries and wishes. Even though I felt a pang of sadness about the idea being shot down, I had really wanted to try it. However, I knew pushing too hard wouldn't help, so I dropped the topic after his clear rejection. When I met up with my friends next, I shared how my husband had reacted. They reassured me that this initial reluctance and hesitance of his was normal, and that with time he would come around. My friends kept pushing me not to throw in the towel and give up. They said that if we opened our marriage, things would get way more interesting than it usually was. They thought my husband's hesitation was just because he wasn't used to the idea and that he'd get used to it over time. Despite my husband's stubborn stance against it, my curiosity about an open relationship only grew stronger. It felt like a tiny seed had been planted in my mind, and no matter how much I tried to push it away, that attraction of experiencing something new, something different, kept pulling me in. I know it was selfish, but the temptation was just too powerful to ignore. I started subtly bringing it up again, hoping maybe my husband would change his mind. But each time he shut me down firmly. It all came to an end when he sat me down and made it crystal clear that the topic was off limits and that he wouldn't budge. This rejection sparked a growing resentment within me towards him. Soon, because of my husband's refusal, I started to pull back from him, albeit subtly. It wasn't something I planned, but rather a natural drift that seeped into our interactions. I still cared for him deeply, but I couldn't help feeling let down and frustrated that he wouldn't budge. I began to feel a bit bitter, not towards him as a person, but towards the situation. I knew it was my own doing for pushing the issue, but in those moments of disappointment, I couldn't help but harbor some resentment. To add to the mix, my friends kept egging me on. They kept tempting me with their stories about how they had so much freedom and excitement in their lives, and they also kept telling me to break away from the dull routine that had settled over my marriage. The urge to satisfy my curiosity became too much to handle, and it pushed me to take a risky step. I figured my husband would never find out, so I went ahead with it, keeping it all hush-hush. I talked it over with my friends, and they were cool about it. They said they'd help me find someone suitable for this little experiment, and that they would help keep it a secret from my husband too. Unfortunately, my first attempt hit a snag. The guy I approached had a strict rule about open relationships. He wouldn't do anything unless both partners were fully on board with it. I should have lied, but I didn't. I was still pretty new to the whole thing, so I was honest with him. He immediately turned me down and said that was wrong. I respected his honesty, but it did leave me feeling a bit frustrated. Still determined to explore, I ended up meeting someone at a club with my friend's help. The vibe was electric, and in a moment of impulsiveness, I crossed a line with this person. My husband was out that day, so I took the person back to our house and we slept together. The encounter left me feeling a bit all over the place. After the person left, of course I couldn't let them crash at my house. They were still basically a stranger. And my husband would be back in the morning. We exchanged numbers, agreed to keep in touch, and then I crawled into bed. I was tired, but also kind of jazzed up. The guilt I expected to weigh me down wasn't as heavy as I thought. Sure, it was there, but I also felt relieved and oddly excited. It was like I had rediscovered a part of me that had been dormant for ages. Next morning, instead of being overwhelmed with regret, I felt surprisingly alive. The buzz from the night before was still lingering, and I couldn't deny the physical side had been intense and satisfying. I had felt things that I hadn't felt in forever. When my friends asked how it went, I couldn't help but share my excitement. I told them it was great, that I enjoyed it, and for a moment I felt like I was living a life full of excitement and spontaneity. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a journey that would lead me further away from the life I once knew. As time went on, I found myself slipping further into this double life. I'd tell myself it was just some harmless fun, like exploring a new hobby or trying a different restaurant. But deep down, I knew I was deceiving myself and my husband. He never signed up for any of this. I tried to justify my actions by telling myself that it was basically an open relationship, just a little harmless exploration on the side. Even though I knew it was far from that. I started seeing multiple partners. I was sneaking around to keep things hidden. I was constantly juggling lies and cover-ups. My friends became my partners in crime. They helped me create alibis and kept my secret safe. Without their quick thinking and support, I would have been busted ages ago. But their loyalty also added to my guilt, because in a way, the only reason I started cheating in the first place was them. As I kept seeing other people, I started to drift away from my husband more and more. It was like we were in the same house but living separate lives. I thought mixing things up would help, but it only made matters worse. We hardly talked anymore, and when we did, our conversations were awkward. I stopped paying attention to what mattered to him. I even neglected the household chores, which used to be my responsibility. He complained a lot, but I was too wrapped up in my own world to notice or care. It was like I had blinders on, focused only on my own desires and ignoring everything else around me. The gap between us just kept growing, like we were living in separate worlds. It genuinely took me a while to realize how much damage I was causing. When my husband found out about my affair, it was a friend who spilled the beans. She felt guilty and told him because she knew he didn't deserve to be deceived like that. I didn't realize she was the one who told him until later. I think my husband went through my phone after her confession. He must have scrolled through messages, taking screenshots as evidence for whatever was coming next. Maybe legal action or just conversations with our family. He confronted me the next morning with all the screenshots he'd taken. He was furious and heartbroken. It was like everything we'd built together crumbled in an instant. He was hurt, felt betrayed, and I was filled with regret. He said he'd never forgive me for breaking his trust and going against our promises. He said I had gone against his wishes and broken our vows. I tried to say sorry, but he wasn't ready to listen, and I felt like my words fell flat. He was beyond furious. I've been with him for a long time, and that was a level of anger and devastation I'd never witnessed in him before. In his rage, he demanded that I leave the house immediately. Begged and pleaded because I had nowhere else to go, but he wouldn't listen. He didn't care about my pleas. He just wanted me gone. He made it clear that I couldn't even take the car and tossed my belongings onto the porch. I stayed outside for hours, sobbing, banging on the door, and begging for him to reconsider and to let me back in. I'm even surprised the neighbors didn't call the cops to make a noise complaint with how loud I was being. I felt utterly lost and regretful for my actions. I didn't know what to do next. I had created this mess. I was filled with deep regret. I screwed up big time. Sitting outside on the porch indefinitely wasn't an option. I had to figure something out. Despite not having much cash, I called for an Uber. My husband had always insisted on separate phones to manage our finances better. He wasn't being mistrustful but practical. He knew I had a tendency to overspend. The Uber took me to my parents' house. I was hoping they'd take me in despite our rocky relationship. Unfortunately, their place was already packed. My younger brother and his family had moved in due to money troubles. He couldn't keep up with his payments, and so his house got repossessed. That meant there was no room for me. They turned me away immediately, no ifs or buts. Feeling desperate, I reached out to my siblings, hoping one of them would help. To my dismay, each had their reasons for not being able to take me in. Feeling like I had hit rock bottom, I had no choice but to start calling my friends one after another. Each call ended with a flimsy excuse, and it became clear they weren't keen on lending me a hand. It was a harsh realization. I thought they were my ride or die friends, yet when I needed them the most, they turned their backs on me. I was at my wit's end. My family and friends had all turned me down, leaving me feeling utterly abandoned and betrayed. These were people I thought I could count on, but when I needed them the most, they had excuses ready to avoid helping me. It absolutely shattered my trust in them and left me questioning our friendships. With nowhere else to go, I had to check into a hotel. Every day felt like an eternity, hoping for a call or message from my husband, a sign that he might forgive me and take me back. I reached out to him countless times. I poured out my heart, but still he has refused to respond. It was a shock to learn from a friend that it was someone we both knew who had spilled the beans to my husband. I was so angry to hear that. She had betrayed me. I wondered why they couldn't talk to me directly if they had an issue. So Reddit, I'm here seeking advice. I'm hoping for a way to salvage my marriage. I know I messed up, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back my husband's trust and show him that I'm committed to making things right. Any guidance or words of wisdom would be greatly appreciated. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a few hours since I poured out my story here. I don't have much of an update, but I wanted to address some of the comments flooding in. There are a lot, and let me tell you, some of them are downright nasty and hurtful. Look, I'm not here to defend what I did. I know cheating is wrong, especially when my partner never agreed to an open relationship. But please, let's keep the conversation civil. I've been bombarded with DMs too, and while I appreciate genuine advice, some of the messages are just adding salt to the wound. Yes, I messed up. Yes, I hurt my husband. But I don't need constant reminders of that. Many of you suggested that I should just let my husband divorce me, that it would be doing him a favor. I get where you're coming from, but you don't know us like I do. We've been through so much together, and one mistake doesn't define our entire relationship. I understand the skepticism, especially since I cheated multiple times. But my husband and I have a history that runs deep. I believe in second chances, and I'm willing to work hard to earn his forgiveness and rebuild what we had. As for my so-called friends, I'm cutting ties with them. They played a significant role in pushing me towards this betrayal, and I won't let them poison my life any longer. It's a tough lesson learned, but sometimes you have to let go of toxic people to move forward. Update. Hey Reddit, just a quick update on where things stand for me. I'm gearing up to start job hunting soon because my savings are dwindling fast. Being stuck in this hotel is starting to weigh heavily on me, and if I don't find a stable income soon, I might be facing homelessness. At this point, any job that pays enough to keep me afloat and housed would be a blessing. On the personal front, I'm still trying to reach out to my husband, but it's been a struggle. I tried to connect with his family, hoping to plead my case or at least get them to understand my perspective so they could help me talk to my husband. But unfortunately, it seems my husband has already shared his side of the story with them, and they've taken his side without hearing me out. It's very disheartening and frustrating to be judged without a fair chance to explain myself. They were very rude to me. Despite this, I haven't given up. I'm continuing to send messages and make calls, and the fact that my husband hasn't blocked me gives me a glimmer of hope. I know it's going to be an uphill battle, but I'm determined to keep trying until we can have a real conversation and work towards resolving things. Update. Hey Reddit, here's another update on where things are at. Unfortunately, I haven't had any luck finding a job yet, but I'm trying to stay positive and keep searching. However, today brought a major blow. I was served with divorce papers. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and I had a meltdown. I reached out to my husband, said things I regret, and then tried to apologize, but he's still not responding. It's heartbreaking to realize that my hopes of reconciling with him are fading fast. The reality of the divorce papers has made it all too real. I know some of you might find a sense of satisfaction in this outcome, but I'm not ready to give up just yet. I'm holding on to a sliver of hope that we can still work things out somehow. Update. Hey Reddit, quick update here. I've managed to find a potential job opportunity. It's not a high-paying position, but the hours seem manageable, which is a relief. I have an interview scheduled for tomorrow, so fingers crossed it goes well. Wish me luck. Update. Hey Reddit, another quick update from me. It feels like this ordeal has been dragging on forever, and it's becoming clear that my husband has no intention of forgiving me, and we're headed to court soon. I'm starting to feel anxious about my chances because of the evidence of my infidelity. I had hoped we could overcome this, but it seems my husband isn't open to reconciliation. I've exhausted all avenues, even suggesting couples therapy and begging for another chance, but he's adamant. Oh, and about that job interview I mentioned earlier? Unfortunately, I didn't get it. The whole atmosphere there felt off, like they were searching for someone to exploit, and it didn't sit right with me. But the job hunt continues, and I'm optimistic about finding something suitable soon. All I can do now is hope for the best. Wish me luck, Reddit. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a while since I last checked in. I've lost track of time, to be honest. Things have been tough, especially with the divorce process ongoing. But now it's all finalized. My husband didn't budge, he couldn't forgive me. Our court proceedings were standard, nothing dramatic. We didn't have much to divide, mostly because the major assets like the house and cars were in his name. That left me with very little to claim. On the bright side, we didn't have any debts to sort out, so that's a relief. As for finances, I received some alimony, although it's quite modest. It'll cover my stay at the hotel for a short while, which is better than nothing. I managed to land a job after all. I've been at it for a few weeks now, and while the pay is just okay, there is room for growth. It feels good to be back in the workforce and to have something to focus on. The job isn't perfect, but it's a step forward, and I'm hopeful that it will lead to better opportunities down the road. It was a rough ride on Reddit, honestly. The comments and DMs were brutal, no sugarcoating there. I know I messed up by cheating, and I'm not trying to dodge that fact. But I also wish there was a bit more understanding, considering we're all human and flawed in our own ways. As for my living situation, I've been thinking about renting an apartment. The problem is the cost is sky high, especially with the housing crisis going on. I'd have to find a roommate to make it work financially. I'm not sure how active I'll be on here anymore. Maybe I'll take a break, or maybe I'll just delete this account altogether. It's been a roller coaster sharing my story, but it's time for me to focus on picking up the pieces in real life. Goodbye, Reddit.